Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Night Arts. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thursday Night Arts is presented by Evergy with additional support from the Kauffman Foundation. Because of their generosity and concern for bringing the arts to people like you, we are pleased to share with you tonight's talented lineup of artists. If you are interested in sponsoring Thursday Night Arts, please contact Godfrey Riddle. All right, we are ready to get started. I'm so excited. So our next artist up is Laura Nugent. She is a lifelong painter. Laura Nugent arrived in Kansas City in April 2004, looked around and thought, this is a place where I can truly access my career as an artist. In the time since, she has exhibited her work nationally as well as in many local venues. From ARTSKC now showing member offices, Kansas City Artists Coalitions, Nerman Museum in Weinberg Fine Art, Laura's work is in significant collections in the US and regionally. Hallmark Inc., Black and Beach, St. Luke's, Coldwell Banker. She is represented by galleries in Nashville, Oklahoma City, and Scottsdale. Her current studio, The Seat Crusher, is in the historic West Bottoms Wholesome Building, where she is busy prepping for the actual, not virtual, 2021 exhibits. So I'm so excited to hear from you, Laura. I'm going to pass this over to you.
Gosh, thank you for complimenting my lipstick. This is the first time I think I'm wearing it in a year. Really, any makeup at all. Usually I have a mask on all day long. It was great. I think the only thing I would add to it is, gosh, what would I add to it? I did come to Kansas City in 2004 from Southern California. I lived in several other cities before that since I had graduated back in 1992 from art school. I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. And much to the dismay of my parents, I got my degree in painting. They would be very proud today to know that I use my degree in painting today, almost 30 years later. Coming to Kansas City, like Ellen said, was not my idea, but when I arrived here, it was very apparent to me that there was a strong foundation of artists and community already here, artists of all stages of career. And there were also tons of venues to show your work. So it seemed like there were points of entry for any artist who wanted to show their work. Since I didn't know anybody in Kansas City. The first thing I did was start volunteering for organizations that were related to art. And that brought me to the Kansas City Artists Coalition, which is a dear organization to me all these years. I showed up there and I offered to volunteer. I think they were organizing their auction at the time, their annual auction. And there was a form to fill out for whatever position you wanted to offer a couple of hours for. And I think I checked every box and I handed it back to the gallery assistant at the time. And she handed it back to me and said, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I thought, well, yeah, what else am I going to do? So that was a really important moment for me, an important thing that I did. After that, I was no longer a stranger here. I felt like I could go places and I knew people in the room. And within a couple of years, I was regularly showing my work. And by that, I mean, really in any kind of venue, I wanted opportunity and I wanted to find an audience for my work. I also started doing the outdoor venues, the juried art fairs in Kansas City. And my goal at that time, my biggest goal was to do the Plaza Art Fair. I'd been to it after moving here and I thought, oh gosh, this is the kind of environment that I want to be in, and these are the artists that I want to be around. And so I had the goal to do that, and I sort of worked my way up to be ready for that kind of prime time art fair experience. And by 2008, that was my first Plaza Art Fair, and I have been in every one since then, except for last year because we didn't get to have our wonderful plaza in Kansas City. So I guess I would want to talk a little bit about what happened last year. I feel like I'm kind of ready to put that to bed. I wrote a blog post about it this morning on my website to kind of collect my thoughts. And then in doing that, I really want to focus on 2021, kind of flipping the light switch on what I know I have to look forward to for this year. Last year, in the spring, I was working in a different studio space from where I am now. And kind of abruptly, it became unavailable because of the lockdown that the mayor of our city enacted. And in addition to everything else that was going on, it was a very upsetting thing to lose access to my studio. So I made a phone call, and a very good friend of mine was in a building in the West Bottoms. And he said, I think there might be some space in the building where I am. Why don't you come over? And myself and my partner, my love partner, Mark Hennick, and he is also a painter. We came and we looked at the space, and it was and is 1,800 square feet in this building at 12th and Santa Fe, the Wholesome building. And it is very appropriate for two painters who we work on the wall, we work on the floor, we have enough space to spread out and work on multiple projects at one time. So we relocated pretty quickly to this building in the late spring. Much of what I had scheduled for 2020 was canceled. I was supposed to have a show in Oklahoma City at a gallery that represents my work. And of course, the plaza, I was looking forward to that in the fall. And those things were off the calendar. I was fortunate that an angel named Tom, who I'd met at the Plaza Art Fair years before, contacted me and had a commission project for one of his clients. And that was really a significant part of last year. You know, my goal, I think last year was avoid COVID and keep the business part of my art practice afloat. I also had a goal to avoid Zoom, which I was successful at doing until right now. I don't know if you've noticed that. Anyway, I was able to work on this commission project for Tom over several months. I had the whole summer to work on it. That was an important part of last year, kind of a great out of the blue opportunity, but again, it came out of something that had been planted a couple of years before at the plaza. I had a really fun flash sale, something I had not done before. I'd seen other artists do it where they offered a limited amount of work for a limited time to part of their mailing list or people who were on their email list. And because shipping was sort of out of the question because of scale, and we weren't having people come over in person, I made work available that I didn't have a place to show last year. And I offered to do the driveway drop off, the curbside drop off. And I had a great response. I was so touched. I had paintings that, you know, were maybe from 4 or 5 years ago up to current. And I was able to find homes for them. And I was able to make contact with people who I probably only would have seen maybe once or twice during the year, maybe at the Plaza Art Fair. So that was really an important thing for me to have that kind of renewed feeling of purpose, you know, to kind of get to a point where you're used to having a destination for everything that you make. You know, now what are you going to do? You really are an artist. You really are, as a vocation, art is your vocation. So you are probably going to get used to having no place for your work for a while. So what are you going to do? What kind of work are you going to make? And I'll talk about that more in a minute. Anyway, so we did do a little bit of travel. We were able to go to New Mexico by car, which was a long ride, just briefly for about a week. And we did go to see the Nick Cave exhibition down in Bentonville for a weekend. But other than that, we were pretty much here in Kansas City at this space in the West Bottoms. Ellen mentioned that we call it the Seed Crusher. There is a switch box on the wall of this old factory that says Seed Crusher on it. And what we figured out was that that was a piece of equipment that was once housed in this space. And there's actually a lot of oil on these old wooden floors that probably comes from the seed oil. So another thing that we did to stay afloat was we decided that after the plaza was canceled in July, and since we had this space, we could try some kind of experiment where we would invite people to basically sign up for an hour-long private studio visit and come and see us in September over the weekend that would have been the Plaza Art Fair. And that was really fun. We put out the invitations, we got ready, we sent the emails, we did the Facebook, and then it was like crickets. And I thought, oh, I guess that's just how things are gonna be. No one's ever gonna come and see us. But what we learned is that people do wanna come and see us, but when you ask them to make an appointment, they have to think about it and look at their calendar first. So eventually we did have a lot of people sign up and come down over what would have been the plaza and have their hour-long personal private studio visit. And we learned a lot about that. I think that that's something, hopefully we don't have to do it again because we're lacking in an event in 2021. But if we were, if those shows, those big outdoor venues are delayed at least, we know that this is something that we can do again. So I guess I should talk about my work since we are in my studio. And I would call myself a non-representational painter because I don't reference any sort of imagery in my work, anything that's recognizable, something that you could relate to something in the real world. It really is strictly color and shape and composition. And a lot of experimentation for me. I don't necessarily strive to break a barrier, something that's never been done ever in the whole world, but I try to be innovative within the parameters that I set for myself. And I try not to be repetitious. I often have ideas that on the actual canvas are not what I thought they were going to be, but they do lead to other things. And with me being the first viewer of my work, I do have a very high bar about something needing to be exciting for me to look at before I think that it is finished. So last year I was talking about in the spring, and I knew that we were going to have a lot of time to paint. So my only panic buying was really at the art supply store. I bought a lot of paint. I did not buy a lot of surfaces to paint on, so I quickly kind of ran through what I already had. And I looked around and I found that I had collected quite a bit of paper over the past few years. I think I thought that I was going to use it someday for some important project, and the day came. So I had stacks and stacks of thick paper, printmaking paper, and I began by cutting out shapes pretty randomly and then painting on them, painting on them many, many layers. See if you can see that. Many layers. Usually I worked on the floor, and I would use a lot of sandpaper in between the layers to really distress the paper. The paper could really take a lot. And, you know, it almost becomes like leather after a while. So this was the first stage of doing something, again, that didn't have an immediate, see, and I don't even know what direction they go, that didn't have an immediate destination, that didn't have an immediate purpose. This was a new, kind of a new concept to me after many, many years of being busy as an artist. So I worked on these for a couple of months. This was like my daily practice. And I think I really started to explore a new palette. This one, some of these are really kind of rich, solid colors, but there's a lot of layering underneath. I've noticed that one of the things I like about painting is the tension that is evident to me, where the surface is like the finished painting. It's like the finish, the thing that you show to the public. And then underneath is everything that led you to that finished piece. And I kind of have these arguments with myself about how much of the underneath do I want to show the viewer? And why? Is it because I want them to see all the struggle underneath the finished painting? Or is it because it adds depth to it? But I do like showing a little bit of the edge, a little bit of the drip, a little bit of the paint being paint. So these were the first part of what I was doing. And then I found that I had other kind of discarded pieces of board in my studio, and I started looking at those and thinking, oh, I could cut those up if only I knew how to use a jigsaw. But Mark showed me how to use the jigsaw. He supervised. So I have some of these shapes here. This is a shape that I cut out of another board. And again, you can see where I'm showing you something of what's underneath. I'm showing you kind of a raw edge, but I'm also showing you kind of a solid finish to this painting. I really like this one a lot. The other thing I will say about this is my work prior to this year, again, non-representational, was much more angular, linear, kind of traditionally geometric. It still had the look of something that was handmade. You know, I liked having lines and shapes that were originally geometric, but I wanted you to know that I painted them. This year, what I noticed in painting on something that was kind of an odd shape instead of a traditional rectangle or square is that the shapes I was painting changed, and they started becoming more figurative, more referencing a figure. So I didn't know what to make about that at first. I have theories about it now, which I will share with you. This is another one I really like. Again, this was a board that was sort of hanging around the studio. And you can see kind of the underpainting, the color underneath, kind of that bright color. And then it's muted. It's got this large piece of kind of a celadon green on top. And again, it's a very, very figure-oriented shape. And I'm supposed to be a non-representational painter. So to me, am I painting a figure? What am I doing? I think that painting on these kind of really informal surfaces too, kind of like you don't feel as much pressure when you're working on something. Maybe you actually make something better because of that. So then I had it a little more, I started using a little more intent with the shapes that I were cutting out with the jigsaw, and they're getting slowly larger. This is a piece that I have just finished. It's on the screen. And you can see underneath that underpainting, many, many layers of sort of similar shapes built up over time. And that underpainting, that surface underneath is actually a fluorescent red, which is really exciting. And then the gray, kind of that neutral, sits on top. So you're not completely assaulted by the fluorescent red. You know, it's peeking through these gray shapes. And again, these shapes are like, what? I do find them joyous. I find them almost humorous sometimes. I think that they are related to the figure. When I started working on these back in the spring of last year, you know, we were all sort of fixated on our health and our bodies and what was happening in the world. And I was personally fixated on the changes in my own body that are not completely my fault, from what I understand. But I do kind of, I find it funny that I am referencing the figure now, and that I call the series, when I was pressed to name it something, Changing Bodies, Bodies Change. And so I feel like I'm kind of idealizing that. Whatever the figurative references in this work, I'm definitely trying to make it something aesthetically pleasing and ideal in the way that I'm doing it. So anyway, what time is it? Oh my gosh, it's 7:30.
We still have about 5 minutes for Q&A.
Okay.
You know, you are doing wonderful. Oh my gosh, you are so positive and so inspiring. So many people have commented on your energy. Thank you for speaking to 2020 and how that affected artists, because that was a group I was constantly thinking about, and just the way that you persevered through it. Katrina was talking about how she loved coming to see your studio, and the way you were able to pivot and change through the hardship and to see what came from it. I'm hoping this year is a much better year. A lot of people are asking, or first they're saying, welcome to Zoom. I wouldn't have thought this was one of your first Zooms or early Zooms. You're crushing it. So way to go with Zoom and virtual events. You're doing awesome.
A lot of pressure.
No pressure. You are, I'm not lying. I've done a lot of Zoom, and I could take some tips maybe from you. You're doing wonderful. Everyone loves your color, your shapes, your compositions. And Erin was talking about how she loves the idea of what you were thinking about, is like how much to reveal. And she actually quoted you, and I feel like this would be great on your social media, or just, it makes me think of you. She quoted you saying, I'm showing you a raw edge, ... and a polished finish. Like, that's just so beautiful. Erin, thank you for putting that together, because it just speaks so well of what you've been showing. So some questions they had is, you mentioned some festivals or some 2021 events. Can you talk about what is hopefully coming in this next year?
Yes. In fact, the first thing is tomorrow night. There is a new contemporary art space in Kansas City. It is at 517 East 18th Street, and it is called the Ecru Project. And there is a show opening tomorrow night of artists. I think there are 10 artists in the show. It is curated by Kevin Umanya, who's new to Kansas City. He came from New York. And they're open tomorrow from 6 to 9. And then they'll be open regular hours. You can go to their website, the Ecru Project, to find out more about it. So I will be stopping by tomorrow night for sure. And I hope other people will make their way. It's just east of Grinders on 18th Street.
Wonderful. Oh, Mark, thank you for putting that in the chat. So if you need that address, because I was like trying to frantically write that down. Thank you for adding that. Okay, anything else that you'd like to share for the upcoming year?
Well, don't forget about the Artist Coalition auction. That is coming up. That opened yesterday. The exhibition opened yesterday. And that is going to be up through February 24th. And then they will have their live auction virtually. But I have a piece that I've donated to them. I will have my show in Oklahoma City that was postponed last year. That is slated for July and August. And I did have some good news just this week. I had submitted my work for an exhibition at the Sioux City Art Center, and I've been accepted. They reviewed the work of 120 artists and they selected 8. And so that is a show that will begin sometime in May and go through the summer. And I'll be able to go up there and give a presentation at some point. So I'm really excited for that.
Congratulations, that is huge. I don't know if you're seeing all the emoji claps, everyone's cheering for you. That is incredible. Congratulations, very well deserved, very well deserved. Katrina was mentioning how she loves the saturation of color in the body of the work. It really makes you visually dive in. I agree. I love that you used a jigsaw to create some of your work and you learned a new skill with that. Another question we had is actually for Mark. What do you think about when you're painting?
Is that from Mark?
Mark mentioned it, but I also was wondering, like, what are you thinking about when you're spending time on a piece and like working? Like, yeah, what's going through your mind? If you feel comfortable sharing, remember you can pass on any questions. I thought it was you, Mark. Maybe I got that wrong.
I am thinking, gosh, I wish this was a lot easier. Okay, I do think that, I will admit that.
That's fair.
When I accept that, when I have that acceptance, then I think I'm really glad that I have all of this time to dedicate to getting this right. And so I've learned that there's no rushing this process. There is no like one draft and you're done with the way that I paint. And so I kind of submit myself to that. And then I feel really grateful that I have the time, the space, the ability, the drive to do this. This is what I want to be doing. So yeah, when I'm doing it, it's like this.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing and being so real about everything. Your studio is beautiful. Your work is beautiful. If you'd like to support Laura, I've put her information in the chat along with all of her social media so we can stay up to date on all the exciting things happening for you in 2021. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Maggie. Bye, Anna.
I love it.